Good evening, everybody.
We're ready to go. We're ready to go, Storm.
Great. This is the ordinary meeting of the council on the 30th of June 2020, held via remote technology. I now hand you over to the Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Rosemary Dillon.
Before the Chief Executive Officer starts, could all councillors be aware they're now being live streamed, and Councillor Bowling, you're not on mute. So your chuckle was just heard by the whole world. I'd suggest you go on mute.
Oh dear.
Thank you. Thank you. The CEO. And you're still not on mute, Daryl.
Good evening, councillors. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Blue Mountain City Council. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio file and a link to a live stream is available from the council's website. The audio recording will be available on the council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended the meeting. Your continued attendance at the meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without the other individual's consent. The council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The council's code of meeting practice sets standards of conduct for a council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the council. Members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance, and any submissions received have been provided to the councillors. I ask you to please welcome the Mayor.
Thank you. Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. Blue Mountain City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country. This is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Gundungurra people, Ungara takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes the cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders, past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. I have no apologies for tonight. I'll move to confirmation of the minutes. They've been circulated. Let's move Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Hollywood. All those in favour? Against, declare them carried unanimously as a true record of the meeting, and I shall so sign. Thank you. That brings us to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Councillor Brown.
I'm declaring, I don't think it is significant, but I'm just declaring a non-pecuniary interest because I'm on the board of Bendigo Bank. I don't think at the moment there's any investments, but it sometimes can be relevant. But I'm not a paid director and I'm not a shareholder.
Are you declaring a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest and indicating you'll remain in the room?
Yes, I am.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. It's duly noted. All right, Mayor or minute.
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Schreiber, yes.
I'd like to declare a non-significant interest in Councillor Brown's urgency motion regarding the gas at Narrabri.
Yep.
As I have, that's my hometown, and I have a lot of family within that area, and it could be affected one way or the other. So I will leave the room when it comes to a vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. So you're declaring you're declaring, I think, a significant non-pecuniary interest, and you're indicating that when that urgency motion comes up, you'll leave the room.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, councillor. Anything further from councillors? No, thank you very much. Mayoral minute number 1, standing in my name, is seconded the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, I'm actually really proud to move this tonight, and I want to pay my great respect and thanks to the Aboriginal Advisory Council and the work they did on the Pathways Strategic Plan 2020. I want to say that for me as Mayor, the relationship between this council and Gundungurra and Darug traditional owners is a very important part of the sort of council we have sought to create. I want to acknowledge their grace and I want to acknowledge their generosity in their dealing with us. I want to recognise the truth of the past. I want to recognise the present disadvantage which has resulted from the brutal dispossession that happened in this country. And I want to acknowledge and celebrate what traditional owners in the Blue Mountains seek, and that is a vision to walk together to build a more positive future based on truth, based on respect, and based on recognition of traditional ownership. I know that the Aboriginal Advisory Council felt that the statement of recognition and commitment would provide a guiding vision for how council, through every aspect of its operations, would respect and acknowledge the ongoing and unbroken connection that traditional owners hold with Ungara, acknowledging the wrongs of the past and the current disadvantage which has resulted from that. And the statement would also embrace all Aboriginal people, recognising that displacement is a powerful impact of dispossession, and that as a result, many Aboriginal people in the city of the Blue Mountains no longer live on their Ungara or benefit from it. The AAC, supported by us as a council, together, believes that while an overarching agreed statement embracing the interests of all Aboriginal people at a national level is a significant step forward, we together recognise that local acknowledgement and agreements reflecting the distinct local cultural identities of many Aboriginal nations are a concrete material step towards a fairer and more truthful future. The proposed statement is intended to be one such mechanism and will provide local, culturally connected guidance on traditional owners and the broader Aboriginal community engagement that's necessary it's necessary as I guess a component part of a national process, such as constitutional recognition and the Uluru Statement from the Heart. The journey to historic and transformational moments such as this statement need time, and therefore what I am asking is that this local statement from the AAC be received by the council seeking to adopt this significant milestone closest to National Reconciliation Week 2020 as part of those formal commemorations. So I commend this mayoral minute to you. I thank the traditional owners and elders of the Blue Mountains for their contribution and the role they played in making this possible. And I ask you all to support this and recognise that statement we make tonight and the statement that then generates ahead of National Reconciliation Week on 2021 is a very significant moment for the City of Blue Mountains. Does the Deputy Mayor wish to speak?
Just a few words, Mr. Mayor. Look, I totally agree with everything you have said. Over the last 20 odd years that I've been on council, it has been a pleasure to be able to work with the community to come up with some real good outcomes. We as a council have been able to do that with the advisory committee and now this. And I look forward to working with the community to further our relationship and totally support this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further from councillors? Councillor Brown?
Yes, I totally support this too. I think it's a really important initiative because it's what we can do. It's a really good example of a local council doing something that actually takes leadership that needs to happen at all levels of government. And I also feel that, well, yeah, in this country, we're still shackled by history that still is not acknowledged, still is not even really known. I think what the knowledge that we are starting to get about the Indigenous people in the Blue Mountains is just really exciting. There's so much still to discover about the connection they had to this place that we all know is special. So I think it's something that's going to be enriching to the whole community. And empowering to all of us. I think it's not something that takes away from anyone. It's going to make us all stronger. So I completely support it. And I've said this before, you know, I spent my childhood in New Zealand. I was born in New Zealand. And so there, I think where as children, you learn all the stories of the Maoris and you sing the songs, you do the dances, and never occurs to you it's not a shared culture. It was a wonderful thing. And I really hope one day it's like that here as well, where we actually embrace the cultures of Indigenous people as something that we can also share. So anyway, I think this is a great start and I totally support it.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. It's appreciated. Anything further? Councillor Hoare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd just like to briefly add my support to this mayoral minute. I think it's a very important step for the council to take. These issues in our culture wars and history wars, the fact these terms still exist, still understood, and still a matter of popular debate, I think is a sad reflection on how far we have to go. And I think by making these kinds of steps, we can make a tangible difference to progressing that debate. Yeah, as someone of Kiwi heritage as well, spent a lot of my formative years in Aotearoa. Certainly like to support the comments of my Ward 1 colleague. I think New Zealand really has set a tremendous example for all of the countries that have experienced the process of colonisation of just where it's possible to get with treaty, with respect, with dialogue, with a commitment to working out the issues, the many uncomfortable issues of our past. And look, it's a very opportune moment to be discussing this. It's a topical issue in the news. As someone who works every day in the teaching profession, I'm profoundly surprised and disappointed to see our profession in the news as a result of some very sorry lack of understanding amongst one particular colleague, it seems. But as someone whose job it is every day to teach Year 8 students about the legacy of colonialism, I think it's really important that Council is doing this. I would just like to honour and pay tribute to the submission of Darug man Chris Tobin sent to us all this afternoon, and to lend my full support to his comments there. Very, very wise words, and it's great to see that he is so supportive of this initiative. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you, Councillor Hoare, for your words. There's nothing further. It hasn't been spoken against. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, I declare it carried unanimously, and I thank all councillors for their support. Mayoral minute number 2, standing in my name, has moved me and seconded the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, we have as a council been in strong opposition to the government's low-rise, medium-density housing code since it was proposed back in April 2018. In fact, I presented a mayoral minute to you at the time. It was supported by you, 29th of May that year, seeking an exemption from this code on the basis that the code would impact the World Heritage status of the Blue Mountains and our unique values as a city. The state government code allows for medium density development, certain multi-unit housing types, manor houses, terraces and up to 2 stories, to be carried out under a fast-track complying development approval process, provided the development standards under the code are met. Now, this means that these can be approved by private certifiers, not by the council, and that there would be no requirement for submission of a development application to council or indeed for the public to be notified of the process. Mayoral Minute I put to you in 2018 saw us writing to Trish Doyle MP, Stuart Ayres MP and the state government. Both of those MPs, I thank them. They made representations for us seeking our exclusion from this one-size-fits-all approach. And I thank both MPs. But despite their work, the government has not granted us an exemption. Now, the work we've done in addition to their lobbying is multiple meetings with the Department of Planning, numerous letters to the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces. The government's Water New South Wales provided its support for an exemption for the Blue Mountains from this code in its recent submission to the Local Strategic Planning Statement, and most recently the inclusion of an action in the endorsed Local Strategic Planning Statement that you signed off on, you supported, seeking an exemption, which was strongly supported by a whole community. This advocacy was reinforced by our community, which has identified managing overdevelopment as a massive priority concern in the recent community survey we did. 1,000 people were interviewed, and that emerged as one of the biggest issues of concern to our community. No amendment, let me be clear, no amendment to the Blue Mountains LEP can resolve the fundamental concerns that exist in relation to this code and our city. Now, this has been communicated to the Minister and the departmental staff consistently over the last 2 years. In summary, the basis for exemption from the code was that it would pose an unacceptable risk to the environmental values of the World Heritage Area, and the code would define eroding characteristics in our built environment, towns and villages, that it would erode those values that we come to know and love and that people come to see when they visit the Blue Mountains. We've not sat idly by in the last 2 years, making no representations. This was what was suggested in a recent media statement. As I've just outlined, we've been working really hard, and no councils were exempted from the code. So if it was ever possible for there to be an exemption, why were no councils exempted? The Minister and his department are fully aware that no change can be made to our LEP to make this code acceptable in the Blue Mountains. What is proposed would be to undermine the Blue Mountains' built cultural heritage as we know it, to impact World Heritage values, and to cram more people into our bushfire-prone city. This mayoral minute seeks for the Minister to meet with us so that we can have these discussions. It's a meeting we've not had, despite all the representations we have made. I feel confident if we can come before the Minister and Mr Langeveld can outline the arguments he did before with the same Minister some time ago, that we can put up a good case to see ourselves exempt from this code. And that's why I seek your support tonight. This is something that troubles our community very deeply. It came out as one of the key issues in our community statement. Our community cares about this, they worry about this, and we need to advocate for them. Does the Deputy Mayor wish to speak a seconder? You're on mute, Chris.
No, Mr Mayor, I'll leave it. I totally agree with your comments. So that's all I'm going to say about it.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Kerry Brown, then Councillor Hollywood after that.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, sorry, Kerry. I just saw you move. Councillor Hollywood, then Councillor Schreiber, and then Councillor Miles. So Councillor Hollywood and Schreiber. Councillor Brown, just take it as a sign that I'm attentive to you. Councillor Hollywood, then Schreiber, then Miles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you so much for making such a strong statement and bringing forward such a strong mayoral minute. I just wanted to note, first of all, a real kind of disconnect between, or dissonance between the first mayoral minute, where we're looking at recognising the cultural significance of the land on which we're holding this meeting today and the land on which we live, and paying our respects to Aboriginal elders past and present. And then we have this mayoral minute coming forward, which effectively does not respect the fact that we live in a World Heritage Area, that the way in which we treat our land within the city, the urban bush interface, and then the beautiful national parks is fundamental to this World Heritage Area, and respecting the thousands of years of habitation of our Aboriginal brothers and sisters. So I really hope that we can convince the New South Wales government that we need an exemption. I can remember when the New South Wales government was first elected, and they said that it was very much when they were bringing forward a whole lot of planning reforms that they were going to, they said, yes, you know, it will be absolutely the responsibility of the council, the local community through their elected councillors to set the strategy for the city. And that's what we've done through our local environment plan. And that's what we've done more recently through the local strategic planning statement. And to find that something is being imposed that undercuts and overrides all of that is just absolutely astonishing. And I am seriously concerned. I think that if we can make strong representations to the New South Wales government and convince them, I guess we just have to do that. There's too much at stake. And I know that the community is really worried about overdevelopment, as are the emergency services. We would be putting lives at risk to be putting more housing into the Blue Mountains at the rate that it could occur through this, this code if it's imposed on us. So I just wholeheartedly support the Merrill Minute. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I support your Merrill Minute wholeheartedly, and I think it is something that should be well circulated so people know what we are doing and where we stand as a council. What concerns me most of all is that we will have DAs that are approved by private certifiers. I went through this once before, this in another area, and it is very, very hard to control. And I think what our staff have said and what they do, and to have another meeting with the minister, all their staff, is important, because once we open the gate and the horse bolts, it's going to be very hard to shut the gate again and try and bring it back under control. So I think this is a very, very good Merrill Minute and needs full support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll only say that it is inconceivable that a minister with whom we had such a good relationship 5 years ago, who had such a thorough understanding of the complexities of our area, should now turn and, in such terms as his media release carried, simply describe that the people of the Blue Mountains are not to be left the one thing that is more important to them than anything else, their quality of life. We could all talk for hours on this, and I won't. I'll only say that I am revolted by this, and I would like to inform the council that my council Liberal Party colleagues, that all 4 Liberal councillors be writing to the minister in the strongest terms, indicating that this decision must be revoked. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. That's a strong signal. Councillor Fernanda.
Hi, firstly, I just want to echo what everybody has said. I sit here meeting after meeting, and every time it just seems like the state government continues to undermine the values that we have here by imposing other policies and legislation that actually removes the voice from the community. You know, when I'm sure that when we all put our hand up for election and we were elected, we were here to be a voice for our community, for the residents, for our natural environment. And it just seems time and time again that our representation is swept under the carpet, which really means that they ignore what our community wants. They ignore what is important to us. This doesn't surprise me at all. With when we look down what's happened with the plains, it's a flood area, and yes, yet they're wanting to raise the Warragamba Dam wall, so you know they can justify putting more development down there, and they know they're putting people at risk. They know their lives going to be at risk by imposing more development down there. It's no different from up here. What they're expecting us to do is, as you said, cram people into one of the world's most bushfire prone areas, put lives at risk, put those emergency service personnel's lives at risk, all for the sake of what? Just putting in more people because they have not the foresight to look at putting populations elsewhere. I'm just totally disgusted with this move, and I really feel sorry for the community of the Blue Mountains, and I feel powerless in my representation to them, as I promised. I guess we all united, we can be a stronger voice as a council, and I really hope that we do have some leeway with the minister and they do actually look how unique we are up here.
Thank you.
So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Fenner. Great words. Thank you very much. Councillor Brown, then Councillor Fell. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement on this. The bushfire risks, the environmental impact, the amenity impact is just sort of hard to believe that they even can consider this. I think the other point I want to make is that I find it really strange too how they imagine, it's like how many people you can get in a telephone booth. It's getting ridiculous. We have projections for, I think it's like 6 million people in the next sort of few years, 6 million visitors. We're already being told we've got 8 million visitors coming to the national parks. So it's not just that we're already at capacity really with our homes and how many more we can build, but we have this issue that they're expecting the Blue Mountains to continue to grow in tourism, and they're putting 1 million more people on the plains right beneath us who all want to come up here. And so somehow it just seems, it's just insane. Like, I mean, we can already see now, even last weekend, what the tourism revival looks like. To add increased, allow this sort of explosion of residents, I just find it just seems so irresponsible. And I also think the other side of it is just that the fact that we will lose all design control too, and though that's a small thing, our DCP matters, the fact that we do have some design controls on things, and the idea that anyone can put up anything. So there's that aesthetic as well that is just it's so distressing. So I mean, again, I think we can all see it, and we know that it would take very few years to destroy the mountains if it goes ahead. So I think we have to fight it.
Thank you for your words, Councillor. Councillor Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief on this. I just wonder where it's going to stop. I mean, we've got the upgrade, or so-called upgrade, of the Great Western Highway. We're going to get the B doubles roaring through the full length of the Blue Mountains. We've got the aeroplanes will soon be hurtling across our skies. And now we get this in a bushfire prone area. It's really as though the area is under extreme attack, an attack, you know, and I will be partisan for a moment. It's attacked by the government, by the state coalition government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fell. Councillor Miles, order. That is most unruly. I'm joking. All right, I saw another hand go up, and it was none other than Councillor McGregor. You wish to speak, Councillor?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that people actually understand what this will mean, medium density housing. It will mean that on the current building blocks, you can cram 4 2-storey units on those blocks. You know, that cuts out all the pervious ground that tends to soak up water and minimise urban runoff, those sorts of things. It makes retreat from bushfires more difficult and more dangerous. And as Councillor Fell said, it makes living just completely unpleasant with B doubles thundering past your doorstep and 24 hours a day flights over our head. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Any further discussion? If not, there's one matter before us, and I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, for that. The next mayoral minute is the last one, a mayoral matter of urgency. It's moved by me and seconded Councillor Christie. and we move that, noting the impacts of fires and COVID-19 on the sporting season and delayed commencement of community sport scheduled for July 1, the council endorses that the Parks and Sports Ground fee seasonal use community not-for-profit fee is waived for the 2020 winter season and for the 2020-2021 summer season to support sporting associations and sporting communities return to sports competitions. Councillors, I want to acknowledge Councillor Christie for raising this issue with me and thank him for the discussion he and I had. I also want to acknowledge the Director, Kirali Toomey, and the CEO for speaking with me about this and for supporting this proposal. This is a fee we charge based on the amount of users or amount of members a club has. This fee is submitted to the city for a range of things, and it is a fee levied against players. They haven't had the season they were going to have. And it shouldn't be limited to simply winter sports. We know that COVID-19 continues to trouble us. This will put money back in the pockets of local clubs who have done it tough this season and allow them to get through the difficulties of COVID-19 and return to community sport thereafter. This is a worthy initiative. It has my strong support. I bring it forward as a mayoral matter of urgency because it needs to be implemented quickly and because it needs the strongest expression possible of the council. Our sporting clubs are a centrepiece of our community. They are doing it tough and they need our support. I commend this to you and hope that you'll all back it. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Christie.
Yes, I do. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to start by thanking yourself, Kirali, and Rosemary for how quick that council has acted on this. I believe it started on a Thursday morning. Last Thursday morning, I received a phone call from one of our clubs after an European Association meeting where they were sitting around the table while numerous other councils had waived these playing fees, and they were just kind of sitting at the table wondering what we were going to do for them. And just to give a bit of an insight into one of the clubs, they're expecting to lose at least $26,000 through social distancing measures, which they support naturally, so they can keep playing. But it's going to impact their barbecue, which is a significant source of their revenue. Additionally, businesses are unable to be as generous with their sponsorships as they have in the past, and there's easily a 50% reduction in that. So across these clubs. So I think anything that this council could do will be greatly appreciated by not just the clubs that contacted me, but naturally every club in the city who would benefit from a little bit of extra resources in such a difficult climate. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for everyone else involved.
That's a pleasure. Any other councillors wish to speak? Is there any opposition to this? There being none, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so we now move to items on which councillors seek to withdraw. Note, please, that you've had some comment today on matters from members of the public that you will have digested, and you can either pull those items out or, if you're content, let them go through, but that's a matter for you. So I'm going to go around the table and see what items should be pulled out. First, Councillor Fell, which do you wish to pull out?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull out item 9, 21.
Bear with me. Hold on. 9, yes.
21. And
21?
Yep, and 22.
And 22. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fernanda, do you wish to pull any out? Do you want to take yourself
12.
on mute? Yep. Councillor
Item
Fernanda.
12.
Yep, item 12. Thank you very much. Councillor Miles? No. Councillor Hollywood?
It's already out.
Thank you. Councillor Hoare?
I'm content. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderklay?
I think we've got to pull out number 9 because we've got to nominate someone.
It's pulled out already.
It's pulled out already. And number 13 for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Christie? You're content. Councillor Bowling? He's content and looks remarkably like Lennon. Now, Councillor Brown, do you wish to pull anything out?
Yeah, I'll pull out 19.
Yep.
I don't
Thank
know. Okay. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown, if you could go back on mute.
Yeah, actually, could I just want to pull out 15 just very briefly as well. 15, yeah.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Neil,
15.
Neil, for me, Mr. Mayor, I was on mute.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber. And Councillor McGregor.
Supplementary 1, Mr. Mayor.
S1, you wish to pull out?
Yes.
Right. It's pulled out. Thank you very much. Any councillors I've missed? No? All right, good. Then I'll take a motion that we move item 2, items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 14, 16, 17, 18, 20 and 23 in globo. That's moved Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Christie. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 9's moved, pulled out by Councillor Fell. You have something you wish to move? You'll need to go off mute, Councillor Fell.
Thanks. I'm off mute now, as you can see or hear. I would like to move that it'll be different from what was printed.
Yes.
And it will be part 1, that the council establishes a wildlife recovery mayoral reference group in accordance with the attached draft terms of reference. 2, that council appoints the mayor as chair of the wildlife recovery mayoral reference group, with Councillor Fernanda nominated as acting chair in the mayor's absence.
Yes.
And 3, that the council appoints Councillors Hollywood and Brown as its representatives on the Wildlife Recovery Mayoral Reference Group.
Thank you. That's seconded Councillor Vanderklay. Is there any opposition? There being none, I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item number 12, it's moved Councillor Fernanda, seconded Councillor Fell. Councillor Fernanda has the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I raised these questions with council staff a while ago because I've had some representation from the community expressing concerns that they feel the commuters haven't got the same access to the library because of the hours it closes. I do note, though, that the recommendation is to do a community consultation after the COVID crisis, so it can I guess be a fair representation and an accurate representation of what the community would like. I'd just like to thank the staff for acknowledging that and waiting for a better time. I fully support that. But just also keeping in mind that I do believe that people might say that libraries are a thing of the past, but I feel that up here in the Blue Mountains, especially, that they're not a thing of the past up here. They're very much a part of our community. They're a social hub, they're a learning hub. And I feel with the hours, if we can extend them, the library can be an educational resource to the younger generations and young school people to come and access the library as well. I think there are so many more benefits if we can have those hours open a little bit longer for our community. But I do fully support the report to say that we will put on hold until a better time when we can hold community consultation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Fell. Is seconder?
Yes, very, very briefly, I'll just echo those comments that made by my fellow councillor for the ward, Councillor Shay Fernanda, and point out that the comment about books in the Blue Mountains and reading in the Blue Mountains, absolutely spot on. The bookshops in Springwood have never gone better. They claim that they're just flat out at the moment, keeping up with the demand for books, and I think that will reflect in the degree of interest in the reopening of the library.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Hollywood.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I guess I just can't let a chance to talk about libraries go by, and wanted to say thank you to Councillor Fernanda for bringing this forward. As you all know, I've been very involved with libraries through the New South Wales Public Libraries Association and campaigning for the Renew Our Libraries and increased funding for libraries, not just here in the Blue Mountains, but across the state. And one thing that's really shown by all of the statistics is, in fact, the use of libraries is growing. The diversity of services that libraries are providing to our community is also growing at a rate of knots. But I think also that one of the key learnings out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that people absolutely rely on their libraries for accessing information and supports, for that social connection, but also for using what we know traditionally libraries are for, which is accessing books and information and knowledge. So I do hope that we can look at extending the hours at some point. I know that our budgets are tight, but I do think that we've learned a lot out of COVID-19 of the value of libraries. It's been one of those things that people have been crying out for to reopen, possibly more than gyms, but gyms are also really important as well. So both sets of services. I mean, not going to play favourites. But anyway, thank you, Councillor Fernanda, and I happily support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any opposition or any further speakers? There being none, Councillor Fernanda, thank you. We'll put the matter. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, declare it carried unanimously. Item 13, who pulled this out? Councillor van der Clay, you wish to move something?
I'll move the recommendations as printed in the paper, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, and that's seconded by Councillor Hollywood. Councillor van der Clay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just wanted to thank the committee members, Councillors Christy Brown and especially Councillor Fell, for going through this process again. We've been doing it a number of years now. Just to say that we were able to give every organisation that put in an application at least 85% of their required funding. We had more applications than we had funding, so we decided to give everybody some funding, and that was about 85% of what they wanted. So I just wanted to thank the committee members and the council staff for a fantastic report, and wish all the community groups the best with their funding.
Thank you. There's a second to wish to speak. Don't forget, we're moving the erratum with this as well. So note that when we move this, it includes the erratum. We note that for the minutes, please, Ms. Cooper. Thank you. Second to wish to speak. No one else wishes to speak. There's one matter before us. It's not opposed. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Who pulled out item 15? Councillor Brown, you wish to ask a question on this?
I just want to make a comment. I'll move it. But
Yes,
I just
move,
want to...
hold on, before you get to make comments, move Councillor Brown, second to Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a short comment. Look, I think it's, you know, I support it. Excellent work. And I think we're really addressing some really important issues in it around the costs that are being incurred, and trying to help community with that and businesses with that. So I think that's fantastic. I like the idea of the trying to get some DAs where they're standardised and they don't have to be renewed every time, so you do it for certain sites. I just want to put in there, some years ago or a year or two ago, I proposed, and it didn't go through, that we look at including as a condition for event DAs that they're not using single-use plastics in the stalls and catering and so on, and that it be compostable, recyclable. This is something that is done with a lot of councils, particularly some of the inner city ones. And I'd just like to flag with the staff to look at that again when we're starting to try and standardise things to help event organisers. One of the things we could standardise is that they ensure that all their stall holders are not using single-use plastics. because in terms of sustainability, that's a really important initiative. So I just want to suggest that that be revisited.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. Anything further, councillors? There being nothing, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. S1, Councillor McGregor moves. Councillor Fell seconds. Councillor McGregor has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's a pleasure, Councillor McGregor.
In moving the recommendations, I'd just like to say how very proud I am of this council and its support for people working in the arts at this particularly difficult time. Arts workers have been particularly hard hit by the COVID-19 restrictions. They've been the first to be laid off, and they will be the last to be employed again. And unfortunately, the majority of them have been unable to access JobKeeper. These quick response grants were designed to assist in the creation and development of new work that can be either delivered online or when COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted. They clearly answered a need, Mr. Mayor. The committee received 60 applications all up, and that's 4 times the number we usually receive for our standard City of the Arts Trust grants. And as the report says, the huge response to this grant round is a tangible reflection of the size, diversity and value of the arts industry in the region and the opportunity that exists to support this industry. With over $110,000 of funding support requested for a $20,000 funding pool, this grant round provides tangible evidence of the need to support the region's artists and the arts industries. I'd just like to add my thanks to the dedicated assessment committee for giving up a whole weekend to get through this huge task of assessing so many applications. And our staff, Lynn, Paul, Sally and Felicity, for their great support during that busy week. We've got some really exciting works in the pipeline and I look forward to getting them out there. I commend the recommendations to you.
Yes, thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Fell.
Again, I'll be very brief. I'd just like to endorse the remarks made by Councillor McGregor about several matters, the impact of the COVID-19 on the arts community.
Yep.
The fact that the arts community is in a particularly, it's in a unique format, and so it misses out on so much in terms of the support available for people who earn their living in more conventional circumstances. I'd also like to echo the comments thanking the staff for their effort and the members of the committee, and I'd like to add my thanks and hopefully the thanks of council to Councillor McGregor for the work that he's done in this. Thank you.
All right, that's great. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Fell, thank you for your contribution. Councillor McGregor, you need to go on mute. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? All right. Then there's one matter before us, S1, and I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Excellent. Item 19, Councillor Brown, you pulled this out. Do you wish to move something? Councillor Brown?
Sorry, which one is it? Sorry.
It's 19, Darebin.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll move it. Yes, I'll move it as it is.
Move Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Vanderklay. Councillor Brown has the floor.
Look, I just wanted to thank the staff who have prepared this report. It's been a couple of years. I wanted to acknowledge that this hasn't been straightforward. Darebin is, I think, the largest private landowner in the mountain, so they're very important simply in that capacity, but they're also an Aboriginal Land Council with I think something like 600 members, not just in the Blue Mountains as they cover Hawkesbury and as stated in Blacktown. But I think it's important to say this hasn't been easy because The Land Council has, there has been a very large conflict in this state related, where really caused by the Native Titles Act and the Land Rights Act, putting Aboriginal communities at odds with one another. And that has also had impact in our community. And that's made it very difficult for the council. And so I just want to acknowledge that I think this is a very measured approach, and it is important that we are widely inclusive. We have tonight acknowledged absolutely our connection and our relationship with the Darug and Gundungurra people. But this is also a relationship that you know, that we're now looking to develop. And I think particularly one of the things the report brings out, as well as the Yurrabin having really important land holdings with residential land and so on, they have a lot of environmental land, some very special sites, up at Blackheath and down at the old Glenbrook Pool. They need a lot of care, and they'll need to work with us because there's weed issues, there's asbestos issues, there's all the sort of issues that we know come up particularly on land that's on the edge of the escarpment and so on. So there's lots of reasons in terms of caring for country we need this relationship as well. And I'm just pleased that council is, I think, taking a careful approach, but is actually taking an open approach as well. So, and thank you to the staff.
All right. Any, does the seconder wish to speak?
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank the staff. This is a delicate situation and they're handling it with extreme caution and excellent work. So I just wanted to thank the staff and commend them for what they've been doing.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? No. All right. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. All right. Item number 21, Councillor Brown, notice of motion standing in your name. You move it. Is it seconded? Councillor Brown's notice of motion. Is it seconded? Councillor?
Yes. I'm actually going to just amend. I've got an amendment to it.
Well, you can move. You're moving it, so no amendments required. So you move what you wish.
Did it get sent out to everyone?
Yeah, we've seen it.
You've seen it. Okay, right.
So yeah. You're moving what was sent out to us all.
Yes, I am. Yes, and you're waiting for a seconder? You got your seconder?
I've got a seconder, Councillor Christie, and so the floor is yours.
I'll speak to this. Now, this is an issue that actually Councillor Christie and I have both been circling constantly, I think because we've encountered it. I take on board that I was asking for a report, so I wasn't asking, I was asking for the report. I suppose I've got a report in a way, but the report identified a whole lot of difficulties, which I understand, around legislation and what can be done, which is why I've gone back to let's get a briefing, because this issue, I want to understand how serious the issue is, because I know from a gardening point of view that there is little bits of asbestos everywhere, just everywhere. Builders have a very bad habit of putting it in the ground and tossing a bit of, half a metre of soil over it and thinking they've dealt with it. So, and then there's asbestos pipes. It's just as a problem I encounter all the time in my professional work. So I'm aware of it, and I'm aware that the solution is, people's solution is usually the red bin. Now that to me, maybe that's not a problem, but I would see it as a problem. And I'm just trying to find that solution to give people, for these small amounts. I mean, if it's a large, they're actually removing asbestos from a shed or something, then you would do it in a normal way. But when people find a couple little pieces or a pipe or something, it's that stuff that's worrying me, those small fines, and whether there's a way we can collect it or we can, obviously I haven't identified the solution, but I'm still looking for that. And that's what I'm asking for, that start. And also for the scale of it. I mean, is it part of the problem with how we ended up with over $6 million clean up at Katoomba Tep? What is the impact of it really? My view is it is leading to either conscious or unconscious dumping, and that just waiting for legislation, just advocating, it means the problem's still happening. So that's why I want a briefing on it, to just try and really explore what we might do for these small domestic instances that might stop it just getting tossed in. So that's
Councillor Brown, I've just checked. I don't appear to have your words. So can I ask you, no, other councillors are shaking their heads. Are you asking for a briefing and not a report?
Yeah, I'm asking for a briefing on, I'm now saying how we can collect or receive small domestic fines for little or no cost. So,
okay.
You know, just...
No, just my question is, are you only asking for a briefing?
Yes, I am.
CEO, have you seen the words? Because the councillors don't appear to have.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I have.
Do the words change the staff's recommendations?
I think they do, Mr. Mayor. We're happy to brief councillors on this.
On the basis that the CEO is happy to brief councillors on this, and the CEO has expressed that she has no concerns, can I ask if there's any opposition to us getting a briefing on the matter? There isn't. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We'll have a briefing. Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. I'll now move to item 22, resourcing plans, stormwater and easements. Councillor Hollywood moves. Councillor Fell seconds. Councillor Hollywood has the floor.
Thank you very much. And I would first up like to thank the council officers for the back and forth conversations that I've had, not so much in preparing this notice of motion, but in the lead up to creating this notice of motion. So if we cast our minds back to the time between the bushfires ending with the rain, which we're very grateful for, and the pandemic hitting, there was February, and February was full of floods. February equals floods, basically, and an enormous amount of stormwater. And I spent quite a number of weekends during February either talking with people on the phone or going and visiting people who had stormwater or water that should have gone down an easement, maybe not going down an easement, but going across their property. And some of those issues were things that council had known about, that they'd raised with council before. Council had tried to do some repair jobs, but they were more like Band-Aid solutions. So I'm really not saying that council hasn't taken these matters seriously. It's just that that it's kind of been this repeating pattern. And I said to many of the residents that I met with, what would actually make a difference for you? We know that council has very limited resources, and it's not easy. Some of these issues to fix may need considerable capital works and really taking, a step back and looking at where the water is coming from down through gullies, etc. And what the residents generally said was it would just be great to know that some work was going to be done at some point in the future, and I felt confident that it was going to happen. So really that's where this notice of motion comes from, that we actually do create in the next delivery plan a clear strategy and identification of all of the issues and looking at what the solutions are. And I really hope that you will support this. I think this would be a good first step in terms of being able to start to address the issues. Many of them actually exist in Ward 2, but it is not simply a Ward 2 issue. There are other properties and areas that have been affected as well, but there were a number in Ward 2 and we don't quite know why that is, maybe the lay of the land. So I really hope that you will support this, and would like to thank the staff for supporting this through their analysis of the notice of motion as well, and the work that was put in. So thank you.
Second, I wish to speak. No. Okay. Councillor Hua, then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just wish to very briefly speak in wholesome support of this motion. I too have spent
Wholesome support or
fulsome
support?
fulsome support. Fulsome and wholesome support.
I'm not
yeah.
sure that I
Wholemeal
agree
support
with you.
even with-
I'm not sure you're wholesome, councillor, but fulsome I can accept.
Thank you for the distinction. That I can just say that I too have spent many hours in the field as a councillor dealing with residents' concerns about easement issues and flooding of properties, some of which have extended for over 10 years. So I really wish to congratulate most genuinely Councillor Hollywood for taking the time to investigate with council staff an approach that is going to be, well, let's hope is going to be successful in addressing these very damaging and long-standing issues. As an emergency services volunteer with both the SES and the RFS, I've spent attended many incidents in Ward 2 during that flood event, and have seen many distressed residents some of whom have been surprised at issues that they've just discovered, and others of whom have known about these issues for a long time. And I do hope that the process that I hope we'll see from this notice of motion initiated will go a long way to solving those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brown?
I'm just going to reassure the Ward 2 councillors that they're not alone. That drainage issues, I've always got a couple of them on the go. So I think Kadumba, falling water, the Aboriginal word for Katoomba is apt. So I completely support this. I think it's a great approach, because I think ever since I've been a councillor, drainage issues have been, every time we get real rain, it comes up. So I think it is time to be consistent, to actually build a strategy around it. So congratulations, Councillor Hollywood, for putting it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anything further? There being nothing, there's one matter before us. I'll put it, all those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Okay, matter of urgencies. Matter of urgency number 1, Councillor Hollywood, regarding the electoral roll. It should be with all of you. Let's move Councillor Hollywood, seconded Councillor McGregor. No, Councillor Bowling, sorry. Councillor Hollywood has the floor. I declare the matter is urgent and it should proceed. Councillor Hollywood, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, because this is an urgency motion, I wrote out a beautiful background, and but it couldn't be included and circulated. So to keep some councillors like Councillor Miles happy, I'll stick to the script and read out my background. Maybe it's reasonably short, but it is important in terms of detail.
You will not
I'll probably make other councillors happy too, unless I start.
Councillor, you'll not speak over my interjection, and you will not be given any leeway on time. And,
no, I know. I'm reading now. Okay.
You're down to about 4 minutes.
Okay. All right. So in late 2019, some councillors received advice from their party office that the New South Wales Electoral Commission had introduced new restrictions on councillor access to the New South Wales electoral roll. These changes prohibit access to the electoral roll or party databases to support councillors' work with constituents during the council term and during a council election campaign. The use of the electoral roll, including through party databases, may include identifying newly enrolled electors to send welcome letters, creating mailing lists for postal vote campaigns and other targeted and direct voter contact through mail-outs, emails, phone calls and door knocking. Under the new rules, it appears that councillors or candidates can only access the electoral roll by appointment with the New South Wales Electoral Commission, and information is available on their website. At the end of January 2020, I lodged a CSR with the relevant officers seeking clarification on this matter. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I haven't received a response as yet. And with the new date of the local government elections now set for the 4th of September 2021 and COVID-19 restrictions easing, I think it's vital that all councillors are aware of and comply with their obligations under the New South Wales Electoral Commission legislation, rules and policies.
Yes, thank you. Seconder, do you wish to speak? Councillor Bowling, are you content? No, thank you. I can't decide if you look like Sigmund Freud or Lenin, Councillor Bowling, although neither wore headphones like that. Councillor Hollywood, you've spoken.
I didn't know how long it took.
Doesn't matter, you finished, didn't you?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything further? One matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Brown, coal seam gas. It's moved Councillor Brown. It's seconded Councillor Hollywood, and I do declare that it is urgent. Councillor Brown has the floor.
You've all been here before. We've all been here before. It's really hard to believe that coal seam gas is seriously being put back on the table right after bushfires just about burned Australia to the ground. I mean, it's just, I'm just struggling with the reality of it and just how serious it is, and that there is an arrangement with the, as I put in the motion, for the state, between the federal and the state government. They have money, $2 billion, but they have to actually spend it on gas. And as you know, actually I've got to slightly amend the motion. There was an application, there was a license and an application for a license on the Blue Mountains that would cover the whole of both the local government area and the national park. And also there's a huge number of potential licenses to be revived, both in the inner west, but also in the outer west. So we're sitting between them. So I connect this also with the duplication of the highway, actually, because really, if coal seam gas is going to come back to this state, you know, then we become the corridor for that as well. Both the waste, there's contaminated water, there's with the Narrabri, which may not come through our way, but other ones would. That's 840,000 tonnes of salt that will come out of that. I mean, there's so many aspects of this: the contamination of the soil, the contamination of the water, the risk to the Great Artesian Basin, but also the risk. Obviously, we're back to fossil fuels. We've got methane as well, and we're back to the risk of us being part of that here and being a corridor for the transport of both waste and the construction. So there's so many elements that I know it's work. I thought it is work for the staff to do a submission. I don't think it has to be a large one, and there's a lot of very good material being prepared. We can go through links to the Stop Coal Seam Gas, and there's all material there. I'd encourage everyone to make a submission on this, because this is the if we don't show again that coal seam gas, that fossil fuels are just not acceptable. You know, renewables, we have the capacity for 100% renewable. It is just, there's no reason for us to be going to gas. And as I think most people know, it's for export anyway. It doesn't even in terms of local needs, it's for export. The way it works, it can end up putting prices up here. But the other thinking of it is that it's just going to end up being a furphy, because the rest of the world is moving to renewables. So it's like the government's moving in completely the wrong direction. And I think as a council that has taken a lead on climate change declaration, on climate emergency, on trying to be carbon neutral ourselves by 2025, and having a World Heritage Area to look after, there's so many reasons we have to say no. We are going to stand against this, and we encourage everyone to take the time to write a submission on this. Thank you.
All right, seconder, wish to speak?
No, I agree, and we have, as Councillor Brown said.
It's either yes or no, Councillor Hollywood.
I'll speak very quickly to just say, yes, I thank Councillor Brown for bringing forward the notice of motion. And also we have absolutely been here before, and we have, as a council, I guess I'd just like to remind members of the public, very clear positions on our opposition to coal seam gas. And that was a huge issue in the last term of council. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hoare, you have the call.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, look, as Abraham Lincoln said, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. There is obviously a very strong and enduring push from the resource extraction industries to gain access to the coal seam gas in our state, in spite of all of the scientific evidence that says that on both biodiversity and climate grounds, it is an absolutely, it's a fool's errand to be pursuing these resources. We must leave it in the ground. We must stand with Lock the Gate, the very strong and powerful alliance between the farming community and the environmental community to resist the pressures of the very large extractive industries. But look, I'd like to assure the council that my Ward 1 council candidate, Sarah Redshaw, is very much in alignment with this motion. She has a long-standing and very deep interest in the Pilliga, has actually spent some time up there a few years ago, staying in the Pilliga pottery and caravan and walking around the area, and being awestruck with the black cockatoos and noting the cypress trees from which our native cypress floorboards come from. Noting also that there's been a huge amount of ironbark logged up there. Candidate Sarah Redshaw was driven from Coonabarabran to Narrabri and then west around the park through Barradine, and was struck by the special nature of the area. She thought then, even then, several years ago, before the big kerfuffle over CSG has really come up, that was being protected, but found then, to her horror, that it was not being protected against the state government gas and mining interests. She and I and my Ward 3 colleague Kingsley Liu are all very much aware that this is a very precious and biodiverse part of New South Wales, and we all share a strong interest in the attempts to mine and the already struggling area that has been grazed and logged so heavily and is now subject to the extreme fire events with which we're all so familiar. Sarah Redshaw has promoted the cause of Pilliga at every opportunity through organisations such as Lock the Gate and through her own social media profiles over a long period of time. We are all alarmed that we could be contemplating any attempts to extract coal seam gas in Australia, given the disasters that have resulted in the US and other areas. And we are united in our continued support for the farming communities fighting against CSG and coal mining in areas where coal is grown and what is left of the native environment is continually and lamentably under threat. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare. Anyone else on this matter? Councillor, by the way, Councillor Fernandez having computer issues. She just wishes for me to record her support for this item. As for the last item, Councillor Fernandez, thank you. That's duly recorded. I hope you heard me. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all for mining, not this kind of mining, and absolutely not in the Blue Mountains or anywhere near it. Coal seam gas leaves long-lasting problems, we know that, and I'll summarise it simply by saying that when the opposition is made up of a weird coalition consisting of David Shoebridge and Alan Jones, you realise that something is very, very wrong and that dollars are talking where dollars shouldn't be talking. No CSG in the mountains.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderklay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question of the staff, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the relevant officer.
Yes.
My understanding was that there were no more leases in the Blue Mountains. Can the staff confirm that?
Yes, to the officers, General Manager or CEO through you. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, we'll have to take that on notice.
Yes, thank
you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councillor McGregor is next, I think.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wonder what Minister Keane, who has a strong interest in protecting the environment and indeed in supporting sustainable energy, feels about being ordered to spend whatever money he's got on coal seam gas when there's a crying need to improve connectivity to the flourishing solar farms that are all over the state at the moment.
Yes, thank you, councillor. Anybody else? No one else wishes to speak. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. These matters of urgency are presented in order that they were received. I've got two matters of urgency, both in relation to the same thing, but both are urgent and both are in order and both are complementary. They both relate. First one is Councillor Hollywood. It relates to safety along the Great Western Highway. It is seconded by Councillor Bowling. Councillor Hollywood has the floor.
Yes.
I do rule it's urgent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I note that Councillor Brown has also brought forward a similar motion. So, in speaking to this, I note the tragic deaths that occurred on the weekend, and I guess it's my thoughts are with the family and their friends, but it's also really struck a chord with the local community as well around the safety of that area. And I think that when something like this occurs, we do need to call on the state government and whatever it's called now, Transport for New South Wales, to undertake a safety audit. And we know that the local member for the Blue Mountains, Trish Doyle, MP is calling for that as well. So we would like to lend our voice to that. It is a challenge for the community to understand that really this is a matter that sits with the state government, but we do have a strong role in advocating on behalf of our community to the state government. State government's come up a lot this meeting, and so I do hope that you will support this notice of motion, which is really, or urgency motion, which is really about calling on the state government to invest in a proper safety audit so that we can see what might be the contributing factors and what might need to be improved.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bowling has seconded. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, I simply support everything Councillor Hollywood had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowling. Appreciate that. Any opposition to this? There being no opposition, I'll put it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Brown, I declare that your motion is urgent. Councillor Brown moves and Councillor van der Klee seconds. Councillor Brown has the floor.
This is the one on Sinclair Avenue and Scott Avenue, is it? Is that the one?
That's correct, yes.
So this is complementary. I mean, I suppose it's just more targeted to that very specific stretch where there's the two intersections of Sinclair and Scott Avenue between sort of Wentworth Falls and Allura. And I'm pretty sure several years ago we've already written to the state government about, or the RMS about this. And I've, as Councillor Hollywood said, it's very distressing to be talking really after the passing of someone, that is the thing that pushes us yet again to say that those two intersections are so dangerous. And I go past them at least twice a day, often 4 times a day. And I often have to I try to avoid using them. I hate coming onto the highway at either place. So I know just how treacherous it is, particularly if you've got an older vehicle like I have. Very hard to judge speed at which traffic is approaching. You've got to get across 2 lanes of highways into the middle turning lane from both sides. And there's been a lot of crashes there. There's often hubcaps and glass and so on. I had a staff member have a very bad accident there some years back. So what I'm asking is that, I've spoken to Mr. Parsons about this, we discussed this, about we do need to ask for the crash stats on that area and to try and get some black spot funding really quickly. And I understand that our local member has written, well, I've seen the letter just an hour or so ago that she's written. So really it's working with her. But I think this can't be this particular section. And I personally think it's probably traffic lights. And I think one of the problems is that the RMS doesn't like traffic lights. And the whole duplication of the highway is based on trucks wanting to get through as quickly as possible. So there's, this is my personal view, that there's a resistance to them, but we have to, I feel we have to be really strong on this one, that you can't have people's lives at risk. So anyway, that's why I support that we need an audit of all the intersections, but I think we all know these two right next to each other are particularly dangerous and they need to be addressed as quickly as possible.
And I just make a comment before I take the next speaker in relation to black spot funding. One of the issues, and we had this with Valley Heights years ago, is that the jurisdiction over the highway and intersections onto it sits with the state government. So we can't apply for black spot funding for their road on their jurisdiction unless they want it. And we've had this issue before. Hopefully they will see sense. But unfortunately, the road and the intersection are not within our jurisdiction, so we can't impose changes, even black spot funding itself, onto the state government. They need to be prepared to play ball, and we hope they are. Councillor van der Klee as seconder, you've got the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I want to thank Councillor Hollywood and Councillor Brown for bringing these two matters of urgency up. And I asked the staff when they write to the relevant minister about this particular issue, that of these two intersections, that we really need to look at a little bit further of that road all the way up to the crematorium, because the camber on that road is a real problem. And that when, especially in wet weather, we've had a lot of people being killed on that section of road because of the wet weather through there. When I drive through there, I'm very cautious of that, and especially in the rain. So if the CEO and the relevant staff would also take that into consideration, I really appreciate it. And I'd like to thank all the two councillors for putting this together. And because a lot of people from Ward 2 come out on Sinclair Crescent, all of those people on the western side, so if they're heading up towards Katoomba. So thank you very much, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Does Councillor Fell, you wish to speak?
Once again, very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I totally support efforts to get any funding put in or get the state to fix any particular intersections up and down the highway. But and I think that should be done, and you know, wish we get success with that. But I would just say that from the point of view of the lower mountains, the older parts of the highway, there's just a huge need to have a proper audit done so that we know that where the danger spots are all along the highway. Some of these spots may not have actually had, and it's just a matter of luck, may not have had fatal accidents that occur on them, but they are nonetheless dangerous. And I'd just like to see the whole issue of the highway revisited.
And to give you comfort, I think Councillor Hollywood's earlier motion talks about the whole highway.
That's right, and I fully endorse that. I endorse all of these appeals.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fell. Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I totally support Councillor Hollywood and Councillor Brown in this urgency motion. The amount of complaints I've had from people getting out of Scotts Avenue and the near misses there are a regular occurrence, not just occasionally. You see the trucks coming down the hill there and what happens. So I think if we can get the support of council and of our local member, Trish Doyle, to really get this through the black spots as quickly as possible. And as Councillor Brown said, we think the state roads don't like traffic lights, but that's a spot where traffic lights should be in put in to try and save lives. So I support the urgency motion.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Fernanda, do you wish to speak? You can't be heard? Okay, I think Councillor Fernanda wanted to publicly record her support for both of these resolutions, her concern at what happened over the last weekend, and Councillor Fernanda wants to record her desperate sadness at what occurred and the lives that were lost. Thank you for your text, Councillor Fernanda. I hope that I've recorded that for you appropriately. Anyone else wish to speak? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. I thank you very much, councillors, for that. A matter of urgency in the name of Councillor Brown. It's seconded Councillor McGregor. Relates to the Medlow Bath Highway safety upgrade. I rule that it's urgent. Councillor Brown has the floor.
I just need to mention, because I don't think I sent it through, that Councillor McGregor has asked that we take out I'll read out what it'll be, but just to remove from the second clause the list of A, B, C, which was details really about the highway duplication. So the motion now is that the council confirms its support for the highway safety upgrade through Medlow Bath at Bellevue Crescent and Foy Avenue to be completed as a priority. And if needed, that the Blue Mountain City Council seek RMS black spot funding for this with the assistance of Blue Mountains MP Trish Doyle. So
that's seconded, Councillor McGregor.
Yep. And then that the council opposes, as an alternative to this safety upgrade, the peremptory commencement of work on the duplication of the highway through Medlow Bath, which should not be undertaken. Council further notes that the duplication of 950 metres of highway through Medlow Bath to 5 lanes that will revert back to 2 lanes at either end has the potential to create traffic chaos for Medlow Bath for years if it is undertaken before the funding and designs are confirmed for the rest of the duplication. So the issue here is this upgrade was actually planned several years ago along with the Blackheath safety upgrade. They did Blackheath and they never did the Medlow Bath safety upgrade. And it appears that the RMS is just planning to come in and do the duplication, but they haven't got anything organised yet. We've got all this feasibility to do. There's so much that's not done. So really, the Medlow people are saying they want their safety upgrade now. It's the same thing. They don't want to be waiting around, nor do they want the RMS coming in and basically doing a 5-lane strip of just less than a kilometre, which is going to create chaos to the traffic on both sides for years while the rest of this duplication is sort of consulted on and fought over. So essentially, what we're saying is we need to do, the money should be there, but if it's not, I mean, it was there, if it's gone, then we need to ask for black spot funding again to deal with those 2 areas that were identified, and the designs are done for the safety upgrade, but the safety upgrade hasn't been done. So that's just the background to it.
And again, that perennial issue, only if the RMS will accept the black spot funding for its road. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor McGregor, did you have anything you wish to add? And Councillor Brown, if you could go on mute, that'd be great.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this was a very a welcome urgency from Councillor Brown, and I thank her for it, and Councillor Schreiber for his contribution to the duplication of the highway through Medlow Bath. It just obliterates the place effectively. It's the height of madness in planning, in my view. But as Councillor Brown said, they haven't attended to the safety upgrades between Medlow and Blackheath that were the result of crash statistics anyway. And I note that there was a very terrible accident on that strip, was admittedly further up towards Blackheath in the week preceding the one at Sinclair Crescent. So there's a very urgent need for that safety upgrade to take place, and a very a very urgent need for the duplication of the highway through Meadowlow Bath to be stopped. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Schreiber, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to support the motion put by Councillor Brown and Councillor McGregor, it's on the side of madness to make that into a 5-lane into 2, and we need the money for these black spots. And if the council, or if we can speak to our state member about trying to get that black spot money for Foy Avenue and the other one there in Meadowlow Bath, which will help alleviate some of the problems that there is in there. So it's a matter of urgency, as been put by Councillor Brown and Councillor McGregor, that we see what we can do as a matter of urgency on this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, the issue is, will the state government accept the black spot funding for its road? Remains to be seen. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Schreiber, for your contribution. Is there anything further? Is there any opposition? There being none, I will put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Fernanda, you were waving then. Did you wish to speak, or? No, you're good? Okay, thank you. You were just supporting it enthusiastically. Thank you. Noted. All right. CEO and Executive Officer, am I correct in saying that brings us to the end of tonight's business?
Mr. Mayor, the questions with notice and responses to questions.
Yes, they can't be debated, CEO.
Yeah, but did we? I don't think we approved them in Globo, did we?
Yeah,
so.
Good point. The items 24, 25, 26, we move them in Globo. Move Councillor Vanderklay, second Councillor Fernanda. All in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. And of course, we can't debate them, so that's dealt with. Nothing else, CEO?
And Mr. Mayor, just to note, we did adopt the confidential business paper, busy recycling item 8, that was in Globo.
Yeah, when I moved item 8 in Globo, that incorporated the confidential item and the resolution contained therein. I rule that way, and the minutes should reflect that. Is there any further business, CEO or Executive Officer?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No.
Executive Officer, you confirm that?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nothing further.
It's moved we close the meeting. Move Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Christie. All those in favour?
Aye.
They're carried. I wish councillors, staff and the community watching us a fond good night. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night all.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, good night all.